Light test film, Comes press conference, September 17th, 2024. Does anybody need me to keep going? Is everybody set in the back? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You just came in from the left. Are you okay? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. We're going to be closed on time.
Hey, Judge, you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Now, this is unusual to have a press conference on one case from the prosecution side. This is grandstanding. This is a new trend in American justice when they tend to make an entertainment display out of it. This is what you call propaganda. In other words, it sounds more like they're trying to distract from something they would conceal.
I muted the sound until they come out.
Yeah, it's rather weird what they're doing here.
Why do you say it's weird?
Because, as I said, this indictment is not the notice pleading to put the person on notice of what they're being tried for. It does that, but it's more of a glam thing where they're trying to convey an impression to an audience, somebody above and beyond the defendant himself. See, an indictment is putting a defendant on notice of what you're charged with, all right? The feds can do this stuff by ambush, which they usually do. So when they go above and beyond the bare bones notice, you know something else is going on, and they're trying to make a political impression. And also, they're putting in very graphic details of certain limited parts of the whole picture. So you wonder why they didn't put the whole thing in, but then it would be 3 or 4 times longer than it is right now. So instead of stating just what's necessary so the defendant knows when he is supposed to have done something wrong and the accusation as to generally what it is, they're going way overboard in some things. They've got real long run-on sentences, and some of the sentences are very poorly drafted because they are self-contradictory. Appropriately, they're talking about the Mann Act, and they're also inferring that this is a criminal enterprise without coming out and specifically saying it's RICO. Next thing, they are alleging that these acts took place in interstate commerce and across state lines. And as near as I can tell, what they're talking about in their 14-page indictment is there are others that are getting blackmailed to shut up. It's just a few sentences that infer that. But what's going on is there were professional sex workers who were involved to put on freak shows while others who weren't part of the professional scene were getting their freak on watching it. This looks like old stuff from San Francisco back in the late 60s when in their red light district they had live sex shows going on. And it looks like somebody's trying to duplicate these things in private for a select audience. So they do allege international activity, which is how Homeland Security gets in here, because otherwise they wouldn't. But since Homeland Security, to a great extent, is set up to counter terrorism, international, and also man-made disasters like 911, or natural disasters like road collapses or landlocking of certain areas due to forest fires or floods, I was wondering how they would get Homeland Security as the primary moving agency in this instead of just the FBI. But it does look like, from what I'm reading, that they're trying to protect the reputations of certain individuals. They allude to that during the course of this indictment. Indictments are not always well drafted. Some of them have bad language, misspelled words. And
my name is Damian Williams, and I'm the U.S. Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Today, I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs's crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced. And as alleged, Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs's residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs's electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well that we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second, we are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly. Anyone with information can call 1-877-4-HSI-TIP. I want to express my deep appreciation for the victims and witnesses who have used their voices and helped bring this criminal conduct to light. We would not be here without them. I also want to thank the dedicated case agents on the HSI Trafficking in Persons Squad in New York. They have been with us since day one and have worked tirelessly on this investigation. They will continue to be invaluable partners to us. I also want to thank the incredible agents and analysts from SDNY who have also provided tremendous assistance on this case. I'm deeply grateful for their continued work. And finally, I want to thank the outstanding career prosecutors from SDNY who are handling this case. Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Chrissy Slavic, Madison Smizer, and Mitzi Steiner, and their supervisors, Jamie Backleeper and Jacqueline Kelly. They are members of the Civil Rights Unit in our criminal division. We created the Civil Rights Unit when I became U.S. Attorney. I'm deeply proud of their work on this and so many other cases. I'll now take some questions.
Eric Katursky, ABC.
Thanks, Damian, thanks. The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today. And we are committed to making sure that justice is done. Next question.
Julia Ainsley, NBC.
Thank you for doing this. You said we are not done and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
Janet Fisher, Newsday.
What's the difference between the sex trafficking and promoting travel for the purpose of prostitution?
Well, there are different crimes with different elements. I don't think we should get into the nitty-gritty of the legal discussion right now, but the sex trafficking, we believe, they're all serious offenses, but the sex trafficking conduct carries some significant penalties, and we are gratified that we were able to bring that charge.
One more coercive than the other?
I'm not going to be able to get into that, but you can look it up, and yes, sex trafficking, especially when it involves coercion or force, is a very serious crime, and it carries significant penalties.
Good afternoon, Darla Miles, ABC7 New York. Thank you for this press conference and for the details. 2 questions. In context of this indictment and the information that was presented to the grand jury, are you able to clarify the number of victims? It's mentioned plural in the indictment, but can you specify the number of victims just for this particular indictment? And secondly, can you provide details about the alleged arson?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide either. The number of victims, you are correct. We are intentional in saying multiple. The details of the arson incident are limited to what we have in the indictment and also the detention letter that we filed, which contains more details than the indictment does at various points, but we don't have anything more beyond that. Next question.
Lynn Tran, CNN.
Are any of his accomplices or associates under investigation? And additionally, could he face any more charges?
So the investigation is ongoing. That means both as to him and to anyone else who we believe committed the crime with him. Next question.
Juliet Papa.
Hi, good morning from 1010 Wins. Any indication that some of the women or victims here were imprisoned in his residences, and did he have locations where he kept them, and they were not allowed to leave? And also, he's indicted here, although there were searches and raids in LA, Miami. Why in New York?
Well, I'm biased. I'm the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. I think that we have an outstanding track record of bringing some of the most impactful, sprawling, complex, difficult sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking, you name it. The Southern District of New York can do it, and so we're very proud of that. And so the scope and complexity of this investigation isn't something that we ran from. It's something that we embrace, and we will continue to do that. As to your question about whether he imprisoned anyone, all I can say is that, I mentioned this March 2016 incident where something was caught on video where a victim was attempting to flee, and there was violence that was associated with it.
Was that at the residence or a hotel?
That was at a hotel.
Matthew Lee, Inner City Press.
Thanks a lot. Does your office intend to seek remand, or are you reaching a bail package? And if you're willing, how would you contrast this with the R. Kelly case in EDNY? In terms of the elements, thanks.
So we will be seeking detention. We have filed a letter laying out our reasoning for seeking pretrial detention. I'm not going to be able to expand beyond what's in the letter, but it contains all of the reasoning, and it contains the law as well. There is a presumption of detention in a case like this, and we think that's warranted.
John Anise, New York Daily News.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some more detail about the searches of his residence, the guns, the cases of lubricant, and the videos. Where were they found amongst his residence? Were they all scattered around the houses in one place? So I kind of wanted to just get a better picture of how that stuff was found.
Well, look, I think that some of the details that you're seeking are in the detention letter. So for instance, some of the AR-15s, 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in his bedroom closet in Miami, broken down into parts along with magazines with ammunition loaded in them. So some of that detail is in the detention letter. Beyond that, I'm not going to be able to get into where other items were stored.
Ben Kochman, Post.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Your office was the office that had been prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein before he died in custody. I have not read your detention memo yet. It's the first thing I'm going to do after this ends. But does the memo address, or is your office concerned with Combs's safety in custody, given what happened with Epstein?
So we are concerned with anyone's safety whenever they are detained prior to trial. It's part of our obligations to keep people safe as well. It's part of the criminal justice system. So, but I do not draw any sort of connection between Jeffrey Epstein's suicide and what may or may not happen to any other defendant while they are detained pre-trial. And of course, the decision whether to detain the defendant will be up to a judge. Our position is that pretrial detention is warranted under the law and based on the facts of this case. And I'll leave it at that.
Are some of the prosecutors on this case some of the same prosecutors that had been handling that or that worked on the Maxwell case?
So I'm not going to get into the staffing. I will say that this team, this group of AUSAs, this incredible group has been working on this case around the clock, and they've had their hands full. Next question.
Gus Rosendale, NBC News.
Good morning, sir. Combs' attorney said that his client has been cooperative with investigators. He said that this morning. I was wondering if you would have a reaction to that.
Let me just say this. I think that generally and with increasing frequency, the word cooperative or cooperating has taken on tremendous elasticity and no longer really bears any relation to what the word means when we use it in a very specific context. So responding to lawful process and the like does not qualify as cooperation when we use that term here.
Mike Sisak, AP.
Thanks. To that end, was there any discussion of Mr. Combs surrendering? I understand he was taken into custody at a hotel in Manhattan last night, and maybe that wasn't the plan. Can you elaborate on how that came about and why that was?
I'm not going to be able to get into any sort of operational details as to how he was taken into custody and when. He is in custody right now. He will be appearing in court later today.
Was there any discussion of him surrendering, given they claim he's cooperating?
I'm not going to be able to get into law enforcement tactics or operations. Well, I can't get into the charging decision. It is very meaningful to us that weapons were possessed, as we allege in the indictment. Part of the reason why this conduct was so pervasive and harmful was because victims and others didn't necessarily feel comfortable denying him his wishes, as we allege, because of the presence of firearms. I should leave it there.
Thanks. Last question, Jacob Shamison.
Jacob Shamsian, Business Insider. Thank you. Given that he's the sole defendant in this case and that you allege he's part of a conspiracy that involves members of his companies, do you anticipate a superseding indictment that bring allegations against other members of his companies or other co-conspirators as well?
I can't take anything off the table. Anything is possible. Our investigation is very active and ongoing. And I think a lot of you who cover this office know that when we say such things, that developments are certainly foreseeable, but I cannot predict them sitting here today. All right, thank you, everyone.
What part of this business empire is
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ooh, boy. I heard some horrible things. Let me tell you what I heard.
Okay.
In defending a federal criminal offense, typically the feds go against the defendant by ambush. They obscure what they're going to go with beyond the barest notice. They went overboard here, which indicates they're trying to do something else. You have another thing. You have a massive conspiracy alleged, but only one person indicted. They talk about witnesses and victims, so other people are known, but nobody else is charged in this. I find that extraordinary because the amount of time they've had to work on this, they had ample time to bring in these other individuals. I noticed when reading the 14-page indictment, it's very verbose and it keeps talking about intimidation of witnesses. I would surmise that those witnesses are the people that were there enjoying or participating in being, shall we say, inspired by the theatric performance that we're talking about. Also, there's no mention of the fact that since they are alleging these people are prostitutes that are involved in this, that there's no charging against people who are committing criminal activity. Another point is this focus on 3 ARs with that were broken down, 150 round drum, and a small quantity of ammunition. The criminal offense is that the serial numbers were altered or removed or defaced. That's generally a crime. But I would say I live in Memphis, Tennessee. And on the block I'm on, which is an upscale area, or the street I'm on, I would hazard to say that most of the houses on this street possess 2, 3, 4, 5 ARs and more than one drum magazine involved. So this is in Florida where they seized this. All of these broken down weapons or disassembled weapons are in a bedroom. So Florida is a gun friendly state, so there's nothing exceptional about it. I am rather astonished, but not astonished. Whenever the feds do this thing where they want somebody pretrial detained without possibility of bond, they're trying to silence the person because that individual might say something that's damaging to other things. And in this case, I think what they're trying to do, since by all standards under the federal bail system, this defendant would be qualified to, if anything, a release on his own recognizance. He has been in an island where there is no extradition agreement with the United States. He returned. His lawyer had been in constant contact, and he should be released on quite a reasonable bond since he's demonstrated his willingness to appear to handle the matters. That they're asking for this pretrial imprisonment is indicative these days of they don't want the defendant talking to anybody about what he might know. This prosecution is brought to you out of New York from the office it's brought to you by, because it is part of a political thing. It is also this thing going against Donald Trump, and it is also part of this thing that is attempting to protect others. Hold on one second. I have to go to the door, but I'll be back on this.
Okay. I do have the indictment and I want to pull it up. So when you get back, if you wanted to briefly go to highlight certain things of the indictment for people to acknowledge. But let me go here. Thank you, Marvin McLean. TD Cakes is next. Have you ever been swallowed up? Yeah, I think he should be next because if Diddy is not the only one, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to keep calling these people victims. If they were minors, if they said no, and he continue, okay, you're a victim. Other than that, I'm sorry, you're not a victim. Thank you, Stacy Galore. 1,000 bottles of baby oil is crazy. Yeah. Oh, honey, they were slipping and sliding. They were slipping and sliding. What is with the baby oil? And I'm like, isn't baby oil, that is not kosher for a woman's vagina. If some oil slid up in a vagina, honey. Guys, please hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up. Thank you for being here. This is a special edition. We just got finished watching the press conference of Sean Combs, who was arrested last night. It was breaking news. And he is officially charged with racketeering and sex trafficking. 14-page indictment. We're going to go through it when the judge comes back. And I'm glad the judge is here to break it down because everyone right now on YouTube, content creators are talking about the lubricant bottles and the baby oil bottles, right? And I get it because we're not legal experts. However, the people that are reading the indictment, they're going to interpret it in their own way, not what's factual. And that's why I am grateful that the judge is here. So please hit that like button. Please share this. It's very important to hear Judge Joe Brown. And please donate. Actually, donate to Judge Joe Brown Cash App. Let me pull it up on the screen here. Where is it? I got to be better with this. Oh, I thought I had it up here. Oh, yes, it's right here. It's going across the screen. So Cash App, $ Ricky L. Stone. I need to edit this a little bit. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so, again, I didn't want to save this conversation to Thursday because we're going to be on to something else. Go get the barbecue sauce, donate to his Cash App, follow the judge on X. It's very important. Yeah.
Let me add one thing
Exactly.
before we
Coconut
get
oil
off.
is way better. Yeah.
Let me add one thing before we get off. This is what happened with R. Kelly. But in one sense, if you read the indictments relative to R. Kelly, you will find there's much less detail in them and just bare bones notice. And I'll repeat this again, when you're defending against a criminal offense in federal court, it's pretty much an ambush trial. They tell you just as little as they can about what they're going to do. And you have to go through a lot of changes to find out information. And they just had a press conference to lay out some accusations as to what they are talking about, that generally defense has to file a whole bunch of motions and have a lot of hearings to get that information. So it looks to me, not that there is necessarily criminal activity that's gone on, since there's a presumption of innocence, nor that there was not. There may be, it's up to them to prove it, but it looks to me like what they're trying to do is protect some category of people, the nebulous many witnesses that they allege in their 14-page indictment, without naming them, and to get Combs out of the way so he can't talk and embarrass anybody. And again, this is brought to you from the same U.S. Attorney's Office, same area, where You had the Epstein matter. You have a great urge to protect certain people, which I think is why they want to pretrial detain him, and not from physical harm, but from embarrassment. And it's also the same people where they're using the process up there for political manipulation, which is why the area you find them going after Trump. So in this case, it looks like they're protecting somebody, and they are going
I think they're
overboard.
protecting someone in Kamala Harris camp. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know who, but it looks like they're going overboard here to put a bad picture. And I'm particularly offended about somewhere. And remember what I said when I talked to you? I said this was not New York where they served the search warrant. This was in Florida and California. And in Florida, he had a property, a lot.
Wait, so why did they arrest him in New York?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is where you go to right now. This is what's dangerous about federal law. Somebody has done something in one part of the country, and it has not touched anybody on the other side of the country, but some hotshot U.S. attorney in some district decides to go make a point and go after somebody. This was like Wesley Snipes got indicted in a district in Florida that he had never set foot in his entire life.
So
see, it happens. And
the U.S. attorney, the man we just saw in the press conference, Damian Williams, he is the U.S. attorney for Southern District of New York, nominated by President Biden in August 2021, and confirmed the United States Senate October 2021. It says Mr. Williams is a chief federal law enforcement officer for the district. So yeah, he was appointed by the Biden administration.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm nervous about. I've been doing this for 50 years. I think the first federal case I had where I tried it, I was representing the defendants, was 45 years ago. So I did it a lot. But here's what's bothering me. And I pointed it out several times when we talked about it. He had a property on the West Coast and a property in Florida, but the property in Florida had two mansions on it. They were right next door to each other, literally. They only searched one of them. And then we're talking about KY jelly and baby oil. What the devil do you bring that out for when you're talking about a criminal matter? And
right, that doesn't sound criminal.
3 disassembled ARs in one property with one magazine of ammunition, maybe 5 or 6. Usually people have 8, 9, 10, 30-round magazines for any type of semi-auto weapon. It's just what people do. One drum magazine.
I have a quick question.
Big deal, but they're making one out of it.
Right. Quick question. So they keep bringing up the guns. What if those guns it was registered in his name? How can that be illegal?
Well, see, the problem is the prima facie illegality is the obscuring or erasure of the destruction of the serial numbers. That is a federal crime.
Okay. So should I bring up the indictment?
The indictment, yeah, it's 14 pages and it's very clumsily written. It jumps between extreme detail and none at all, which is typical of a federal indictment. See, the main thing with federal criminal prosecutions is this: on a state level, you're entitled to all the information unless there are people whose lives are jeopardized by providing the information. You can get the names of the witnesses, their best contact number or addresses, what they're going to say, what the case is all about. And in the federal system, it's by ambush. They don't have to tell you a single witness. They don't have to tell you anything other than the bare bones theory of what kind of case they're talking about. The only thing you're entitled to get is statements of your own client, meaning the defendant, anything they seized from the defendant, a list of that. And if a witness testifies at trial, then you have 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour to look over the transcript of what that witness testified to in front of a grand jury, if they went in front of a grand jury. And the worst thing in the world is trying a pristinely innocent defendant in a federal criminal case because you don't know where the hell they're going. I've had cases where we've gone to trial 2-3 times, and each time we found out more about the case by going through the trial that the feds wouldn't let us know. And we got partial not guilty verdicts and hung on the rest. And finally, I walked them after, say, trial 2 or trial 3. So them putting this information, I'm looking at it as, oh, they are doing something way wrong here. They're trying to build a political impression. And they're trying to keep this man in to keep his mouth shut so he doesn't tell on anybody.
Okay, so that's why they don't want him to get bail, and they want to keep him detained until
incognito. Yeah, and also why I think they alleged international influence, which brings in Homeland Security. When that comes into play, you can talk about security interests demand that the defendant be kept incognito, and the only person he can talk to is his lawyer on infrequent occasions, so you can keep him silenced. It's Biden did that with Eastland 40 years ago. So
I have another question. So where under this indictment, where you want me to go and highlight real quick that you want people to kind of be informed on?
The witnesses they're talking about who are supposedly intimidated. How do you get unindicted witnesses at a sex show?
What page was that?
Going on. See, they never said what this was all about. What I surmise from my experience representing people charged with this kind of stuff over the years, Mad Act stuff, is what they're talking about is women were procured along with male actors or participants for live sex shows like they used to have 50 years ago in San Francisco and other red light districts around the country. And they were putting this on in private mansions, and there were certain people that are being protected who were present for these performances where they could get their freak on. And you notice the multiple occasions they mentioned Diddy masturbating while watching this. So if there are other witnesses, I'm sure he's not the only one doing something.
Yeah, it says here, victims believe they could not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of victims.
Yeah, not just the victims. What they're trying to do is protect the other person's presence.
Right. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs' security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse.
Yeah, you'd have it's kind of hard to find a high profile Hollywood type star who does not have armed security sometimes.
So it says that Combs at times, or says members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening.
Yeah, that if that's true, that's inexcusable. All right, I get it. That started with that scene, which was stupid,
But is that a federal charge?
That's not federal unless you tie it in with federal activities, which is the Mann Act, which is what they got
Sean Combs.
not Sean Combs, what they got
Oh, R. Kelly.
R. Kelly on for the statute says transporting of females across state lines for illicit purposes. In today's parlance, that whole statutory scheme is suspect because guess what it does? It only deals with females being transported across state lines for illicit purposes. So it's essentially discriminatory based on sex. Now, that's one reason that it gets kind of weird. The female participants are listed as victims because of the way the Mann Act reads, which was 110 years ago. They were trying to get the black heavyweight champion, Jack Johnson, who had a white wife, and she used to take her white friend girls across with them. They crossed state lines. So racist America at that time thought it was very, very bad for this big black man that no white man could beat was going across the line with all of these very pretty white women. That was just no. And that was why you had the Mann Act. And that's why the FBI got created to bring about the Mann Act. So we transport that here, and you keep a defendant incognito or incommunicado rather, while he's awaiting trial. That means you don't want him to say anything to embarrass anybody.
Well, so it says here, because so it says from at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date filing of this indictment, the defendant and others, known or unknown, being persons employed by and associated with Combs, described in paragraph 6 to 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States. Title 18 United States Code Section 1962. That is to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, as that term is defined in Title 18 United States Code 1961.
How many times, by the way, did they mention specifically RICO in this indictment?
None.
That's what I'm talking about.
But they're saying racketeering.
Yeah, but how many times did they say RICO in the press conference?
None.
No, this they did.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah.
Multiple acts involving kidnapping, chargeable under the following provision of state law, California Penal Code. Multiple acts involving arson, chargeable under the following provision of state law, California. Multiple acts of bribery, chargeable under the provision state law, California. Multiple acts indictable related to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. This sounds like a drug cartel.
Yeah, informant, see all of
You're
this.
talking about the intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics, controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycontin, meth, something.
Yeah, see, in other words, you'd think it is a drug cartel, but what they're talking about is just drugs at the party. See, back in the 60s and early 70s, when you went to a Hollywood party, there were heaps of cocaine on the coffee tables. There were other drugs, amphetamines, piles of them in candy dishes and stuff like that.
Right. So how is that a federal offense? You're getting high. It's casual. You're getting high.
Yeah, but you see, it's still against the law in the federal system, even though
so
don't
even
realize
though I'm having a party and I have cocaine and everybody's using it,
that's a federal offense technically.
So he wasn't drugging these people without their consent.
Yeah, but the way they worded it, see, ordinarily they would have in an indictment, instead of all of that laid out, very inflammatory language, they would just say during the course of this, the
They keep saying
defendant,
victims.
see how many victims do they have that one man can be victimized? You know, has he got a whole
Exactly.
household of people that he's got? I'm
And
gonna
how
blow
wait,
you away if anybody moves, you know.
how are you a victim when you are doing drugs yourself without him shoving it down up your nose? When you are engaging, you give consent. You giving consent. How are you a victim? Because he got mad at you for whatever argument and withheld a paycheck.
See, in other words, what you're talking about is the glamorized, what they've got him on for the violence is the glamorized game of the pimp. And what they are essentially alleging is that he was engaged in pimping for benefit of his clientele, his customers, or the witnesses who were there participating in or viewing what was going on. Remember, what you were getting described are live sex acts going on in various parts of a mansion while there was an extended party going on.
So let me read this part because it says transportation to engage in prostitution from at least in about 2009 up until 2024. Sean Combs knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in prostitution and attempted, aid and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution.
Yeah. In other words, they're accusing him of glamorized pimping. And by the way,
So
that's
you
what
meet
it
a
looks
groupie.
like when I talk about, sometimes when we're on the show and I talk about pimps ain't, you know,
Yeah.
this is what pimping's about. The violence that you're talking about here, that they are alleging, is typical of what pimps do to their prostitutes to keep them in line. So they didn't say that, but that's about all that you would ordinarily get in a standard indictment when they're not trying to make a point of it, which is person engaged in pimping activities, and they wouldn't try to put in details like 1,000 bottles of lubricant and oil, baby oil. What the hell is that?
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? Is that just to embarrass him? Because it's like
That's
how
to
many
paint
people
a
use
picture.
baby oil and lubricants when they're having sex? A
Yeah,
lot.
that's to paint a picture language. See, the indictment for what they have in it is basically just a handful of counts that in an ordinary federal system, besides laying out in a federal indictment, besides just laying out the basics, it would be one paragraph per count. And now you got 14 pages worth because they're trying to glam it up and make a political point.
Real quick, because you mentioned to me earlier in the indictment, you read that they will, have these freak offs and then they needed IVs the next day. And you was like, what the hell? What was it about the IVs you said you read? You said to me, what the hell do they need IVs for? And I said to you, a lot of people get vitamin C IVs because all the nutrients that's been sucked out your system physically or way by drugs or alcohol, you replenish your system quickly with an IV of vitamin C.
Well, you know what
So
you're
why did they
also
have that in the
describing.
indictment?
What you're also describing is a multi-day, multi-night continuous orgy that
Yeah.
used to be popular. See, they didn't come out and say it. Translating from what I heard, based on years worth of it was once there, now it's gone here. They're talking about an extended orgy where there were participants who were putting on shows that were staged to inspire the rest of the participants.
And so it's illegal to have an orgy?
The way they're claiming under the Mann Act to transport women across state lines for illicit purposes. That's the way the act really reads.
Yeah, translation,
Criminal.
you have these young chicks who want some money, who groupies who willingly want to get on a private jet and have fun and drink and have sex and have money spent on them because he's
and important people were at these orgies and they're to be protected. Now, back to this. Remember how this act comes about. This is Jack Johnson, big 6'4" tall, undefeated world champion in a day where the bouts lasted 36, 42, 54 rounds until somebody literally couldn't move anymore. And he's got a white wife, and the white wife has girlfriends who like to travel and party with her. And all of these Southern white folk are upset because this big black man is making a show of traveling around America with this white female entourage. See, and there were rumors that they were having these sex parties. So the way the thing reads is transporting across state line for illicit purposes, without illicit being well defined. That's the way it really came out. That's how the FBI got started to set this up. That's how Hoover got his information for blackmail, by being the investigator in the brothels in this same city, New York. Now, so what we have is obviously Jack Johnson's white entourage, meaning girlfriends of his wife. They're not there engaged in prostitution. They're there for illicit acts, sex acts, which were deemed illicit in 1908, 1910, 1911, 1912.
So it's the same playbook.
Yeah. So what you get is this glammed up thing here with the language they're using. This is not what your typical federal indictment reads like.
So I want to play conspiracy theorist right now, because and for people in the chat, no, I do not participate in orgies, and no, I don't plan it. But the purpose, what I'm trying to highlight here is when you have these high profile people being charged on something that a lot of people in society do willingly, such as sex, they're criminalizing sex, sort of. That's what I'm trying to get at. Well, however, also people are saying in the chat the timing is suspect. Yes, it's an election season. Also in the city of New York, Diddy did receive the key by Mayor Eric Adams. Mayor Eric Adams, his administration is under investigation by the feds.
Now, let me give you a parallel. This happened about 15 years ago a lot. You know when it came into play? 12 years ago. It's when people started blowing the whistles on the mortgage foreclosure frauds. Soros, governor of Maryland, out in California, Kamala Harris got involved with Soros and Mnuchin, One West Bank, and this kind of thing. There were a series of indictments against whistleblowers, and they were confined pre-trial as threats, so they could not expose these people who were engaging in the mortgage fraud business because they were protected people. And all of these individuals got what I would call kangaroo courted. A lot of them got convicted. Some of them got pardoned. Some of them got let out. And they all got a bunch of offers wherein they were told, if you recant your accusations of fraud against Mr. Big over here, you'll get out immediately, or we'll do something for you. So you saw this kind of thing where there might have been, might not have been some underlying wrongdoing, but the main thing was the objective was to silence the people so they would not expose certain VIP types.
So if that's the case, and they're doing this to silence Diddy because he has so much on everybody, and it could be a parallel with the mayor office in New York, Mayor Eric Adams, or what have you. Do you think, if that is the case, do you think that Diddy will go to prison? Because the trial is not going to happen really anytime soon, maybe in a year or two.
Yeah, but he's in jail for a year or two if this thing gets going on, though, if they get what they wanted. Now, they seem to have a blue control of the legal process, both in the federal side and on the state side, which is very dangerous. Again, as I said, the usual protocol, and somebody asked him, one of the reporters, and he got it fended off with an answer, said we can't get involved with the law enforcement tactic. When the U.S. Attorney's Office gets involved in it, it's beyond law enforcement. It's not law enforcement conducting an investigation with the aim of presenting something to the U.S. Attorney. It's the U.S. Attorney already being involved in dictating to the law enforcement agency what they're to do henceforth.
So this is federal.
Yeah, federal. But the point is you got a tale told when they said this is ongoing law enforcement. I'm not talking about how the law enforcement agencies do what. They arrested him in New York while he's out shopping with his kids, and they had already been in touch with his attorneys. They are pulling off a fast one. The usual protocol, and 99% of the time, is when you have that kind of thing, you make arrangements with the attorney for he would-be defendant to come in and surrender himself. After you're talking to him, you just don't go out and ambush him in the streets unless you're trying to get him to shut up, so you don't want to take a chance of him making any statements.
Yeah.
In other words, he might say something embarrassing to somebody you're trying to protect. And then remember, that Epstein mess is still kind of up in the air. What really went on, we still don't know the big picture on that. And that was up in New York, and somebody died under suspicious circumstances on Rikers Island in New York.
Right.
So what is it that is hooked up between that sex scandal mess and this sex scandal mess? See, this is not like R. Kelly, where he's getting his own thing on with his own business.
With minors, yeah.
Yeah, this is where somebody is supposed to be setting up sex entertainments and setting up orgies for somebody.
Well, yeah, for some work, for some very powerful people.
Yeah,
now,
were they the same people going to the island with Epstein or what?
Now, didn't Trump say he was going to release the Epstein list?
Yes, he did.
So it's all connecting here.
Yes, it is.
So, should we table this right now and pick it up? Well, we're going to be on X tonight, but pick up any new updates or going for the details on Thursday show.
Yeah, let's pick it up tonight. Let's see what shakes out. See, in other words, I'm just saying, I may be wrong, but I've been doing this for 50 years. The first federal defense I participated in as a defense lawyer, I walked the client. I think it was 1978, something like that. What is that? That's 46 years ago.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to be on X tonight. Follow the judge on X, Judge Joe at Judge Joe Brown TV. We start at 9 p.m. Eastern. I keep saying a lot. So Diddy had he's stupid. I hope, you know what? Why I pray to God he had a backup drive Because you had all those cameras, all those recordings. You're supposed to have a backup that no one in the world knows about except for you. However, these people are not playing. These people are above Kamala, above Biden. They're above the president. They're not playing with you.
No, they're not.
And you're black. Even if you were white, it doesn't matter. But yes, I think
there's another argument for Kamala being a fake black. You know, she's above it all.
And it's like, these are people more powerful than her. And whether she wins the election or not, they're not trying to have what he has come to light at all, because that would probably turn this nation upside down. And I think President Trump needs to be protected at all costs, because I really do want him to release that Epstein case. And let me just say this is going to be my last final statement for today. United States is the #1 in the world for human trafficking. And that is because the United States government is an accomplice. They're the middleman, they're the front man, they're the behind the scenes man. We are #1, not these other foreign countries. We are #1. We do the most, I think 70%. So the people who he has on tapes, not Diddy, but the people who he has at these freak-offs, because they're freaky, they were most likely on Epstein Island. They're most likely hooked up with Homeland Security. I'm sorry, that is involved with this human trafficking. We have open borders. So that open borders, how many millions of children being brought across the border by mules? They're not with their parents. For the sake of what? For these sick individuals. And this man probably had proof of not them human trafficking minors, but doing things, in their own comfort that will expose them. So everything for me, everything right now is all connected. But people, he is the face. He's going to be the fall guy. And this is so much bigger than Diddy. He was just freaky. He was freaky. He was high. He indulged in devilish, you could say, activities. That's Hollywood. Money, fame, sex, all that.
But most importantly, you also, if the allegations, at least some of them in part, are true, you saw how this is an illustration described of how the pimp game works. The pimp game is poison. People,
oh yes,
nothing cool about being a pimp. This is how it works. And what they're discussing is the routine pimp game. But when you put it in context, remember Kamala in Washington, D.C., they are trying to make the game of prostitution and pimping okay, but this is what's behind it, the beatings and stuff.
Right. And see, but honestly, with this pyramid or with this food chain, Diddy is at the bottom.
Well, Diddy is kind of like, see, the way it works is pimps are kind of like either the waiters, the concierge, or the maitre d', or maybe the chef in the restaurant where the game's being served up. The customers buy, and the dishes are the prostitutes.
Right. But the
so
people who own the restaurant
or serve the dish.
Right. It just so happened Diddy had the dirt on the owners of the restaurant.
Diddy had the dirt on the patrons of the restaurant.
The patrons, and I'll even say the owners.
This is the other funny thing. Have you ever heard of a cooperative, like farmers have a cooperative, or there's a farmer's market and nobody runs the thing? It's just people have an agreement where they come in and they sell what they grew on their farms or their little gardens, or, they put up their little brand of trinket and they all show up at the markets.
Right.
That's more likely what the case is. But see,
I love your
these,
comparison with the restaurant. That makes, and that's exactly how it is. Can you just repeat it before we get up out of here?
in other words, the way the pimp hoe game works is this: it's like a restaurant. The dish is served up of the prostitutes, the hoes. The pimps are like either the waiters, the cook, or the chef, the maitre d', and then the customers come in, and that's what you have. The customers are the prostitutes and the pimps. The pimps procure, the prostitutes are served up, the customer buys.
And who
And
would
by
be
the way, I hate it when somebody says, "Yeah, man, it's about pimping, man." Or the white folk go, "Yeah, man, I pimp my ride out, man." See, like, that's become something that shows the poison of Hollywood and their glorification of dysfunction over the last 50 years. They have taken pimp game, hoe game, and they've glamorized it. And now you got a hoe running for president of the United States of America. And I always keep saying, when I see a hoe, I want to know who her pimp is, even if the pimp is hiding in the shadows so he doesn't get caught.
Okay. Well, listen, guys, y'all want the judge to talk more. You will hear him more tonight on X. Follow him on X at Judge Joe Brown TV. We will be on X Space tonight talking about Diddy and the migrant crisis and human trafficking. Yeah. So at Judge Joe Brown TV, and I'll also stream it live on the other YouTube channel, Real Judge Joe Brown, the Real Judge Joe Brown 23. But so follow the judge on X and you can listen to him more tonight. He has a day. I have a day. And thank you, Judge, because I pulled you in this morning because you ain't want to come on. I was like, no, I need for you to speak to the people to make it plain, and not let them be focused on the baby oil bottles, but focus on the real deal of these accusations. So thank you.
All right, cool. See you for X-Base. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody that sent in a donation. Katalia, everyone. Love you guys to pieces. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in, watching. Please like this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share this video. And comment below. And we'll see you guys tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on X. At Judge Joe Brown TV. And I also and my X is at The Real Dana #7. Thank you, guys. See you later. Bye.